So we're here today. We're having a chat. We're recording it because we are going to make it public. And so we've got Silvana Spiegel here. I'm assuming I say your name correct, because I'm not Argentinian speaking, I'm not Spanish speaking, I'm not Portuguese speaking, so I could screw it up each and every time.
It's Silvina.
Silvina,
So,
thank you. So she's actually part of the CEF advisory team, one of those people that gives me advice whether I want to hear it or not from time to time. And and we're here today because this is one of the last reflective ethics circles, or ethics circles, in fact, for 2025. So we're just going to have a chat, and we've got Sphere here as well, who wants to chime in a bit later, but she's here wanting to hear what Silvina and I have got to say, particularly around cultural biases. Well, I'm Australian and I live in France, but I have Maltese heritage, so I'm a bit of a mix of person. I view the world then through a fairly wide lens, though I think it could be widened even more. The only problem I find myself walking into, and maybe this is my blind spot, is that I just see the challenges in communication from my Australian English to British English, and the nuance, the way they speak. I'm very direct. If I'm really annoyed, I can be quite blunt. I can be extraordinarily blunt if I'm very annoyed. It packs a bit of a punch. But in different cultures, that's really difficult to take. And then I'm working with a lot of British people, and I have to find that when I'm talking to them, they talk around corners. They don't tell you what their issue is, and you have to guess. And then they'll say something, you go, now they've landed on it. Now I know you're talking in the context of you being annoyed. Okay, so let me backtrack in my mind to figure out exactly what you're annoyed about. Incredibly frustrating for me. I don't know what it's like for them. They probably feel like they get hit with nails when I get really blunt. So, or even just my normal directness. But I wonder,
probably.
Sylvina, in some of the communications you've had to have with me and my directness, what's that like from your cultural context?
Well, that's interesting because I come from also a blend of different cultures. I'm Argentinian. I was born in Rosario in Argentina, and I lived in Brazil for more than a decade. And I work with people from different cultures because I know different languages. And my heritage is I'm a Jew, and I come from Jews that fled Europe during the in between wars. So I have also that part of my cultural background at play. And so for me, as an Argentinian woman, to talk directly is easy and fine, and it is expected and is a relief
Mm,
because Argentinians are blunt like that.
mm,
So it's uh, for me it's easy, but in Brazil, the culture is not like that. It's not direct, but it's more careful. It's more, you know, Brazilians are mostly represented as people that dance a lot, that they are very cheerful. And my understanding is that permeates everything. So when they are telling you something, they also need to dance around the things a little bit before going into the the actual thing. And
Can I
uh,
ask you a question about that? Is that
yeah,
is that part of their relationship building to be able to land the message that they want to give?
yeah, it can be. I'm not sure I understood your question. Can you
So
rephrase it?
when you said that they dance, it's kind of like they
Mm-hmm.
dance a bit in communication before they get to where they want to be. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
wondering if that dance was their way of building a relationship to be able to then give the message that they want to give.
Yeah, it probably is. It probably is. They are a very, very warm, very relational people. So the culture is based, and this is in most of Latin America like this. We are based in relationships. Argentinians are a little bit different in that respect because Argentinians have had waves of immigration from Europe, like different waves of immigration. So we have this uh, mix of things to make us more direct. But Argentinians are also very worried about building relationships, and so yeah, maybe this non-direct communication at first, it's more to build rapport and build the bridge of communication. And it's a way of dealing with the issues. It's not that they are avoiding the things, the serious things. They get to that, but it's not in the direct way, not in the mathematical direct way of going from point A to point B directly. They just move around a little bit and talk about other things before getting to that. And Argentinians are not a collective one culture. Argentina and Brazil are both very large groups of people, very huge countries. So it's not the same if you talk to a Brazilian from the north than from the south or the middle of Brazil. There are different cultures within those countries also. And there's a mix, a different mix. And in Argentina, that's the same thing. If you go to Buenos Aires, it's the most blunt people, the most direct people, and also the people that even inside of Argentina are seen as too blunt for us too. I'm not from Buenos Aires, so for me too, they're too blunt sometimes.
I
And
thought
when you go inside, it's less and less. So yeah.
I think it's really fascinating that like it, and I do it myself when I talk about being direct or talk about being blunt, and I kind of generalize the usage of that. But it's actually culturally different. So I
Mm-hmm.
know a German would be more direct about certain things, different to what an Australian would be. Someone in the Netherlands would be more direct about other topics than what a French or an Australian person would be. The French are, they're actually more direct than people realize, given their way of communicating in meetings seems to go around circles and no one needs to know, no one really knows with any certainty who's going to be doing what. But they can still be very direct as well on certain things, but then other things they're not. They would find topics that I might be direct about as really inappropriate. And so I think that directness or not is actually cultural. It's not generalized across the world.
Yeah.
So there's so many layers to it, and we need to be careful, I think, that when we're talking about whether we're direct, it's about what we're direct about in what culture, and does that fit, and how is that going to shape up in our coaching? How do we make ourselves culturally fit in the way we communicate across cultures. Sphere, you got anything to say?
I can add something about that, yes. Is all right, so just to locate, is my parents were Dutch and they immigrated to the Southern Hemisphere as young adults, but I was born in South Africa, but I spoke Dutch until I was 3 and then went to school and learned English. So for me, I have a lot of sort of what I call sort of, yeah, you don't fit enough here, there, and everywhere. And then I live in a country where there are now 11 languages. And so two things just to offer. One is gaze. When you're talking about direct and blunt and things, I think what I notice is the gaze that goes together with it. So somebody being direct and there is a heartfelt gaze. What Silvina, what you were saying about, is it a relationship? And Wendy, and you said it too, is that people use gaze. And so for me, it's so bizarre when coaching is considered to be an auditory function, as if conversations are auditory only, because they're not. And you've just demonstrated it with,
Exactly.
speaking with gestures and gaze. So, so for me, when I think about cultural bias or sensitivity or awareness, is to add to it, what am I noticing about the client, or if it's a team, what am I noticing about how they use hand gestures, facial expressions, and particularly gaze to amplify the social message, the pragmatics of their communication, not just the words that we are using. That's the one piece. And the other piece is, if I think about, I do a lot of microanalysis, in other words, looking at what is happening moment to moment in conversations around things like gesture, gaze, expression on the face, and the words together. And I'm aware that that's a really fascinating way of looking at where there are these misses that happen in conversations, and especially when the coach is taken aback. So you see that like I just did it, that you see them on video or you hear them go, and then there's this, and they are trying to make sense of what just happened. It's a bit like if we use the dance metaphor, it would be like stepping on someone's toe or not catching their hand at the moment when the partner that you're dancing with expects to have their hand grabbed again or expects your hand to go to a particular place. So I'm just aware that that's what I try and pay attention to, is when I first meet a client, is what's happening with all these little pragmatics. How do they look and how do they gesture? Not just what do they say, because it starts giving me clues as to how to tune into them.
Yeah, even the shift in tonality when they say something can give you something. And I mean, it'll give you something behind the maybe what's sitting behind it, even if you don't understand it, but there's something. Hey, let's go digging here, because maybe there's something that's worth looking at for them to help them understand, be more aware, and make a shift where they need to or want to. What about you, Silvana?
Yeah, I think
you work across multiple languages, so I imagine I only just work in English with multilingual people, so it's very different.
Yeah, I think the body speaks differently in different cultures, even in the same language, it speaks differently. And there was a big difference between in-person coaching and virtual coaching at first for that, because in Latin America, in some parts of Latin America, for example, in Rio, where I was living, the body part of the relationship is not one to be dismissed. You arrived in a person's office to see them to the coaching session, and they will greet you with arms wide open. Hi, my coach, how are you? And then they will give you a hug, and then you will sit down and drink something together, coffee or something, and then the session will begin.
Well, that
And
fascinates me, what you've just said about they give you a hug. I don't let my
yeah,
clients hug me.
well, that's cultural. Yeah, that's cultural. I one of the cases that I wrote about in one of the books was about that a coach from another culture coming to Rio de Janeiro will never understand why the person greets them with, "Hey, my coach, how are you?" Yeah. And they are not, every person is not like that. But there a lot of people are like that. They are warm, and their expectation is not to overwhelm you with their hug, but to let you know that they are welcoming you, that you are welcome in their
And
office. So yeah.
what could be a reaction if I intervened in that potential hug with a hand out to do a handshake? Because so often we're talking about coaching and culture, and we're talking about the culture of the client, but we forget about the culture that we're in, that of where we are or who we are, where we've come from, and so where we situate ourselves. And like for me, that might be like, I don't want my clients hugging me, and I don't care where they're from or what's
Mhm.
normal for them. I think it goes a two-way street, right? But we're often
Of
talking
course.
about from what's for the client. It's all about the client, rarely talking about what's for the coach.
I have a good example of that. Um, of somebody who I saw doing this really, I thought, elegantly, and so did the people. It was in a place, a lecture theatre, where she was introducing herself. And exactly that happened. Someone came up to her and said, put their hand out. And she said, I would prefer not to shake your hand. It's not what I usually do, but I would like to greet you
Mhm.
in a way that lets you know that I'm pleased to meet you. Is
Yeah,
there,
nice.
is there any other way we can do this?
Nice.
And it was really interesting because she was wearing a hijab. She's Islamic, she's Muslim.
Oh,
Um, but what I noticed, because I was sitting in, a few rows back, I noticed that there was no sense from the person that she'd refused the hand of, that
Mm.
they felt pushed away, because she
yeah.
used words to indicate that she wanted to welcome them. So
Mm.
I thought that was very interesting. And from a coaching point of view, I mean, one of the things that I know when I do more advanced coaching, whatever that is, with people, and others, people who've got lots of hours of experience with many clients already, is we've talked about, and one of the things that people started speaking about was spontaneously, was saying quite close to the beginning of a session. So not so much just a meeting, but session saying, I would like you to feel respected. And I know that I don't know enough about how to know what I should be even respecting. Could you please make sure that you feel respected and, tell me what you need me to be doing in order that you feel respect. What's interesting was this respect word, not comfortable, none of all of that, just respected. And
Yeah.
I saw a number of sessions where people had been playing with this idea with various clients. It was interesting to see how it was welcomed. And then and your point about them saying, it's my usual practice to leave long silences. I'm not sure whether that is going to be something strange for you.
Mm.
Just asking more questions, you might call it quite directly and bluntly, but without that feeling, but rather this sort of, that kind of, I want to create something where we can both.
Yeah.
But you're quite right. I don't see enough of that. And then I am aware that the amount of what you would call social engagement, Sylvina, it's what you spoke about. Do they say, oh, let's have a coffee? And they
Mm.
see that as part of the necessary way of tuning into one another and then beginning. Not, okay, so what do you want from your session today? And people,
Yeah.
Who are you?
no, So for me, this thing about the first 5 minutes of the encounter is becoming really more interesting. And more interesting is, how do you do the first 5 minutes in a way that is both respectful but isn't forced? It's what I call, it doesn't sound plastic. It doesn't sound like you've had lessons and you need to ask people so that they feel. And also, how do you do the ending? Because I think that the ending can be very important in sessions, not just the middles. And I don't have answers to all of that at all, but I do know that in Nigeria, I worked with one of the coach education schools in Nigeria, and I love the fact that every coach I would be Coach van der Horn or Coach Sveer. All right. But when I worked in when I was in Singapore, people wanted to call me Dr. van der Horn. They didn't feel at ease initially. And it was interesting because somebody asked me, do you mind if we call you Dr. van der Horn? And I said, if that helps you to feel at ease with me, that's fine. But if you want to switch to Sveer or Dr. Sveer, that's also okay. So maybe what I'm realizing and what I'm saying is about this choice idea. Is rather than have this absolutism about, if you're in Nigeria, you must call your coach Coach Sveer or coach, but to say it's common that people do this and they do this and they do that, is the more that we can sort of increase the sense of partnership and choice, to me makes much more sense. And also the willingness to say, this humility of saying, if I get it wrong, if I do something that isn't conducive to you, please let me know, because I'm quite happy to adjust. My purpose is that you should feel free to fully express yourself, and I should feel able to listen and express myself.
Exactly. That, I mean, just even speaking about the different ways that the different options that you might give people to call you, to give you a name, that's like where you have to detach from what you like. Look, I'm Wendy Ann. Will you just damn well call me Wendy Ann, and that's it. You got to sit with what comes at you, so long as it's still respectful, which ordinarily it would, of course. But that requires you to be quite open and detached from your norms in some way, which, I don't know, thinking about, you said mature coaching or experienced coach and whatever that is, I kind of think that that ability to be okay and at ease with everything, so long as it's respectful and not encroaching in a disrespectful or dishonorable way towards you, I think it helps you be the better coach in the end.
I also think it does. I mean, for me, I was a primary school teacher originally. That's how I started out earning my income. And working with small children is incredibly refreshing, because they have a very different way of navigating all these complexities, let's call them. They often are much simpler. They're not simplistic, but they're much simpler. And you also, the other thing I notice is when you listen to what other people say. So I used to work a lot in medical settings, and people would say, no, you mustn't tell the doctor that. That's not what the doctor wants to hear about. You must only tell the doctor about where it hurts. You mustn't speak about your children and your parents. So I think that I think a great privilege is to have access to, how do people speak setting. So for example, Savina, I was thinking, when I go to a foreign country, one of the things I'm always quite happy to do is to see where are the local people sitting, hanging out, eating or drinking whatever they drink. And then I just sit there to kind of listen a little bit to how do people seem to talk with one another in a way that seems to be easy, because you get a lot of clues then. About that, but it still doesn't make it definite, because you have all those things where people go, in Japan do this. When you're amongst elderly people, do that. It's nonsense, because we know that can lead to some of the worst. I mean, I've seen that happen in my country, where people have done that. They've thought they've known what's the right way. And then they've done their protocol thing, and people just started laughing and saying, why are you talking to us so funny? Why are you doing this? Did you watch that movie on the airplane, which told you that you must talk like this to us? We don't talk like that. So I think, Wendy, and your point is well taken, is that we need a flexibility, but we also need to be substantial. We can't can't pretend that everything goes, because as you said with a hug, if it doesn't go for you, then just doing it because you want to be polite doesn't work either.
Yeah, you
No,
try
of
being in
course.
France post-COVID and you go to a party and people want to kiss you and you go, yeah, no, first of all, I've never met you before. Second of all, we've just come out of Silvani, you identify, I believe, as a Brazilian coach.
Yeah. Mhm.
So what does that bring to your coaching in relation to our topic here of flexibility?
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about the little children that Svea was talking about, because when you go to different countries, and we are among the people that switch countries, so more than one culture, the first thing that you start getting is the sense that there is no right way to do things, because people in different countries relate to different issues in different ways. So I think one of the things that I learned to do here, because of being from a different country, was to be more open to learn from the client and less prone to teach the client. I am also from a teaching background. And because I didn't, basically, when I started coaching here, I knew Portuguese, but I wasn't as relaxed in Portuguese as I am today. So sometimes I would try to explain myself more than it was needed. And I received a feedback from my mentor at that time saying, tell them what you know how to say. And if they don't understand you, they will ask you back. Just let it go. You're not you were not born here, so it will never be something that flows naturally as your Spanish. So, and that helped me a lot. Just letting the client teach me what was clear, what was not clear, what was needed, what was not needed, and of course you have your own boundaries and you have your own things that appear to you more adequate than other things. But I think what Svea was pointing out, that I am 100% with her, is the importance of contracting that everything, not in a formal sense, but to tell the person that you're beginning a relationship, a coaching relationship in this situation, but any relationship, letting yourself give the other person your boundaries and the things that you feel are appropriate or inappropriate, and letting the other person tell you what they feel is appropriate and not appropriate, and not expecting everyone to think that the same as you think. And I think little children, they are used to people knowing more than they know. So they don't they are not scared of that. They let you guide them easily. And if it's not like this, and if you don't do stuff like that in my house differently than in your house, they say okay, and they learn that. So we can really learn a lot from little children in that respect as a coach, to be flexible, knowing yourself, letting the other person know yourself, and then learning from them.
I think all coaches should go through some minimal level dance training because like, especially if you're a woman, but it doesn't matter actually which gender you are, but because if you take it in turns on who's leading and who's following, and there's no words, like that is just such a fine art to do. And that's where I think I learned to coach at my best, was when the mouth was shut and I had to follow my dance partner. And I love the communication without communicating with words. And I love the challenge. I think it made me a much better person and a much better therapist and a much better coach, because I had to learn to follow their lead, and the different partners would have such different touch. And I'll never forget this one French guy I was dancing with, who I absolutely adored dancing with him. But holy dooly, was it hard work, because he was so gentle, really gentle. Had South American guy, he was like a brilliant dancer, and I loved dancing with him too, because he would take me to all sorts of places, like in dance, like in movements and things. But he had a firmer hold around. It was much easier to follow his guide. This French guy was so gentle. It's like, did he just say something? Where's he want me to go? I had to. It was really, really, really difficult, and it just enhanced my capacity to follow. I think there's some marrying between them. Just kind of what's making me think about that is learning from children and the Brazilians dancing to build the relationship before they go in for the punch. So, um, mm. Were you saying something then, Sphere? Yeah.
No, I was thinking absolutely, and I think it can be done with a variety of things, because one of my apocryphal moments was where the compliment I received when I did home-based work, it wasn't coaching though, but was the person who owned the house said, she asked me how I want my dishes washed. She didn't just go into the kitchen and wash the dishes. And then she asked my colleague, is that a very South African thing to do? Because no one's ever asked me, how would I like my, because I said to her, I'm going to wash your dishes. We were doing a cleanup in the house. It was a disaster. And it occurred to me, the way that people wash your dishes, and how, I mean, putting them away is already an issue, because if they put things all over, you can never find whatever you need. But that most people know. But I was aware of there are many different ways to wash dishes. So it didn't even occur to me that it was such an, unique thing. She spoke about it for ages afterwards. She kept that worker who came to my house and not only washed my dishes, but asked me how to wash. How do I like my dishes washed? So I think you're right that these everyday activities are expressions of people's preferences and the way that they like to see themselves in their worlds. And it's true. I mean, even shopping, all kinds of things that we do. And I think what I'm reminding myself about is the idea of, why do we not ask people more about their ordinary lives when we begin a coaching relationship? What goes well for you? What do you feel accomplished at? When do you feel at your best? When are you peaceful? Blah, blah, blah. Instead of just going, what do you want? And let's go. That idea, it is, because people do reveal themselves a great deal. And I mean, Silvina, what you said about the difference between on-site and online, the advantage of on-site, even if they come to your office or your space, but certainly workplace coaching, I used to always walk around, take the long route to the boardroom or whatever had been booked for me to work in with this client, because I could see then much more of how people organize themselves and what seems to be allowable in their territory. Do people write on the walls and whatever, and is it all very neat and angular and things like that? But all of what this is bringing to my mind is that we can have a bias about having a cultural bias. And I think that's a really more of a dilemma. And when you spoke about it, it may have more to do with, how do I stand up for myself and make space for the other, but not, Silvina, your comments about how do we learn together about what works? How do we set that in motion rather than I know nothing and you must teach me everything, or I know everything and you must learn my way. So I think that there is something about that. And the dance, I mean, dance classes
They're awfully fun. Get
um,
to dance with some very interesting people.
yeah.
Anyway, well,
do we want to say anything about translations?
ah,
Because
Oh
I can say,
yeah.
well, let me say my favorite thing at the moment is because so many people are working in the online space. What I'm aware of is that the one thing that technology really is useful for is letting people speak whatever language they're speaking and let everyone else be able to participate a lot better. Because we all just even have accents. So people wanting to use things like run the transcript, closed captioning, etc. And I've been to a number of meetings which are not about confidentiality. They are engagement meetings, like this one that we're having, let's say.
Mm.
People don't allow them to use the technology for some reason because they say, no, this is confidential. And I'm going, so I'm interested in, for coaches, I think that we need to think a lot more about what does confidentiality mean in relation to all the technological assistance that we can use, and who decides about what's really useful in a meeting? Because I'm very aware that I speak with an accent. It's not, I don't think it's particularly opaque, but for some people, my where I put my pauses is difficult because the pausing is wrong for for the way they know their English. Um, yeah, so that's why I was interested in the translation, because I work a lot in translation, both simultaneous and delayed. And ironically, I prefer the delayed translation when I'm teaching. Because, yeah, and then there's the whole question about, is it a translation or an interpretation? Like, is it directly translated and is that correct and all that? So I'd be interested also, because you both have experience in different languages, is have you got any success stories about how to make translation in the moment work well?
No, I only work in English, but I am in France, so they're French speaking. My French is really bad nowadays, particularly since COVID. But prior to COVID in particular, I think it was just my level of language, and this may not even answer your question, but it was just my level wasn't high enough that I would say things in French and not realize I was saying it in French. And even now, though, when I'm writing or typing, I'll type in the French manner, and it's so close to English that I don't pick it up, but people around me reading it will go, she keeps misspelling this. And I'm going, what are you doing? Leave my work alone. It's okay. And until they ask me explicitly, or until it dawns on me what's happening, then I realize that I'm in the French version of the word and they're in the English version. So there's a slight difference of, so I have that happen a lot in my writing, or my sentence structures are screwed up. Just even the way of expression can be challenged because of that where I am and what my native is. So I have that kind of thing happening. But then if I have English speaking people with me here in France and I go into a shop and have to tell them what it is in English, and I'm looking at going, oh, I don't know what it is in English. Actually, I only know what it is in French, so figure it out. So I struggle between it, but I also think that's because my level isn't high enough. I think if I was really, really fluent, I probably wouldn't have such problems. You're truly multilingual, Sylvana. What's it like for you?
For me, it's not easy to speak in any language. I have a mess my brain, and sometimes I keep thinking about stuff in one of the languages because I just ended up a conversation, I don't know, in Portuguese, so I keep thinking in Portuguese, and then I need to speak in a different language, and it doesn't flow. But the main thing is I think there is a translation that is a language translation that if it is a direct translation as it is when it's automatic, sometimes it's perfectly done, it's beautifully accurate, but it doesn't translate what the meaning of the thing is.
Yeah.
So I can relate to Svea and what she said about the consecutive translation that sometimes is a more accurate interpretation of what was said than an automatic translation. And I definitely think that culture has to do with that. It's not about language only, because the same phrase is different, has a different meaning in different countries when you have a lot of countries speaking the same language as it is in English. So I learned English by listening to American stuff. So sometimes I hear myself leaning towards the American way of speaking English. But since I listen to a lot of English stuff from I can also understand what they are saying and the way that they are saying, but I am not aware of the differences when I listen to that. I understand that it's understood. I can relate to that. I can talk to a person from a different country. But if you ask me what was different in the approach or the structure, I don't know. So
It's the same with humor as well.
yeah.
Like, just I notice it, like that's something that's really landing on me right now, is because I'm in France. Of course, I live here, and ordinarily my Australian sense of humor is dampened down quite a lot, because it's not appreciated here. Even my self-depreciating humor or whatever it is, it's really not appreciated too much here at all. But the last 2 years I've been back to Australia a lot, because I have a little granddaughter. And I found that my Australian sense of humor has just been sparked up because I've been in Australia a lot more often, closer together. And I have to be careful because it's alive here and it hasn't been dampened down yet. And it's actually, people don't appreciate it. And I have a very dry, devilish sense of humor. Like, even here on this call, I've realized it's come out and I go, oh, this is going live. People are going to, like, if they think I'm British or something, they don't realize I'm Australian, that I have a devilish, dry sense of humor. It's not going to land, right? So this is something that you have to be really mindful of in the coaching space, or professionally across the board, that humor doesn't land everywhere in the same way.
But it's a great source, again, a great source if you are stepping into a space that you don't know. I mean, I'm thinking we've been talking a lot about geography and culture, but even class and culture is if you ask somebody, tell me 2 or 3 jokes that people would tell each other in the workplace and that would be appreciated, and tell me a joke which you wouldn't tell in the workplace because that would be, I mean, just getting 5 jokes from people or 5 little stories already, I think, helps enormously, exactly with what you're speaking about. But it's just interesting for me how much what we're talking about is about the pragmatics of communication, is how do we share meaning, create shared meaning, and also stay in contact
Relationship.
in a constructive and a conducive way, as opposed to create all these potholes or stumbling blocks and rocks in the path. That really what it's about. But I like that about humor, yeah, because humor is a great way to get a very rapid sense of where the kind of boundary areas that I need to be
Yeah.
careful about.
And if we want to link this to ethics, because I think a lot of people have a very narrow view really of what ethics is. What we're talking about is relational ethics, which underpins every single thing we do as coaches. And I don't know that a code necessarily hits on all of that we're speaking about now. So these conversations are really great to bring it alive, but I think the important thing about them is that we can hang the conversations on some conceptual theory or something like that to actually help people say has a validity in this way, not just in our experience of the world, if that makes sense. If we're going to be speaking about evidence-based and having, solid underpinnings to what we do, I think if we can hook it onto a piece of work in some way that helps it, which codes don't do.
No, they often, well, that's one of the things. The codes are very abstract.
Yeah.
Problem with abstraction is that it can become so abstract that it means nothing or everything.
Yeah.
And that's what, I think that's what a lot of coaches come to supervision for. That's what they ask about in education is, okay, I get the idea of this, but what does this actually look like when I'm talking to the CEO of a company who I've never met before and who says to me, hurry up, can you speak a bit more quickly? I have another meeting to go to.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that if you're trying to build a relationship in order to secure work in that particular, company? So you're right. I mean, I think there's a lot of that missing is what does it actually sound like on the ground?
And I would suggest that therein is a problem. If they're saying this is what the code says, and then what does that look like? I'm like, it's not meant to tell you what it looks like. That's not the point. You can't make your practice on that code in that way, but the coaching bodies actually ask you to do that, in fact. But you can't. It's not going to get you there to that space. It's very interesting. We have to have more conversations, it seems. I'm just aware of how long we've been here, and I don't mind having these conversations, but I don't know that other people are going to want to listen to a full 90 minutes. So I just want to thank you both for joining us in this conversation. I'm happy that it was a great idea to record us in conversation and let it go out amongst the crowds and see what they've got to say. Hopefully they're all very kind, and thank you, both of you.
Sure. You're very welcome. And I'm sure it would be lovely if people commented wherever they find this, in whichever channel, is to add their voices and say what their thoughts are and their experiences are with all of this.
Yeah.
Thank you.